Boston rain has a way of turning the whole city into a watercolor painting. Blurry lights, streaked sidewalks, the faint smell of wet concrete rising up from the streets. It was on one of those days, a Tuesday in late October, that I saw her for the first time. Lauren. She was standing under the narrow awning of a small coffee shop on Tremont Street, her phone in her hand, brow furrowed. The rain came down in heavy, relentless sheets, the kind that soaks you to the skin in seconds, and I could tell she'd been caught unprepared. She wore a deep green coat that fell just above her knees, but her hair, chestnut brown, with strands sticking to her cheeks, was already damp. I had been walking toward the subway when I saw her glance up at the sky and sigh. Something about that sigh pulled me in. I slowed down. Without thinking much about it, I stepped closer, lifted my umbrella slightly, and said, "You look like someone who could use a little cover." She looked at me, really looked, and smiled in this way that made me forget what the rain felt like. "You're just saying that because you have the only umbrella on the block." "Maybe," I said. "Or maybe I'm just trying to score points with a stranger." The corner of her mouth lifted higher, like she wasn't sure if she should be amused or cautious. But then she stepped under the umbrella with me, and for the next 2 minutes we stood there close enough that I caught a faint scent of vanilla mixed with rainwater. She introduced herself as Lauren Hayes. I told her I was Ethan Brooks. We talked about the miserable weather, how Boston seemed to skip over pleasant autumn and go straight to soaking misery. When the rain eased slightly, she asked if I was going her way. I wasn't, but I lied and said yes. We ended up walking 6 blocks together, just talking. I learned she worked in graphic design, that she had a cat named Jasper, and that she had a soft spot for bad reality TV. I told her about my job in software development and how I was still learning to cook without setting off my apartment smoke alarm. By the time we reached her building, I already knew I wanted to see her again. I hesitated, then said, "So, can I call you sometime?" She tilted her head, studying me like she was trying to figure out if I was the kind of man who deserved her number. Then, with a small, decisive nod, she pulled a pen from her coat pocket, took my hand, and scribbled her number on my palm. No paper, no phone, just her number, inked into my skin like a promise. "Don't make me regret it, Ethan Brooks," she said, her smile deepening. I didn't, not at first. For the next few weeks, we fell into a rhythm. Long conversations over coffee, walking through Boston Commons with cups of hot chocolate, late-night phone calls where we learned every detail about each other's lives. She had this way of making the world feel lighter, of turning ordinary moments into something you wanted to hold on to. The first time she kissed me, it wasn't in some grand romantic setting. We were sitting on her couch, watching a rerun of The Office. She laughed at something Jim said to Dwight, turned to me, and just kissed me. Soft at first, then deeper, as if she'd been meaning to do it for a while. That night, when I left her apartment, I felt like I'd stumbled into something rare, the kind of love people write songs about. I didn't know then that the same lips telling me I love you would, one day, say those words to someone else. Lauren and I had been dating for just over a year when the idea of moving in together came up. I was the one who suggested it, half joking, over dinner one night. She was pushing peas around her plate, and I said, "You know, if we lived together, you wouldn't have to pretend you like cooking vegetables." She raised an eyebrow. "And you think living with you would mean fewer vegetables?" "It would mean better dinners. Or at least dinners that aren't just pasta and whatever's in my freezer." She smirked. "You make it sound tempting, but maybe you're right." A month later, we were hauling boxes into a 2-bedroom apartment in Back Bay. It had creaky wooden floors, tall windows, and a tiny balcony just big enough for 2 chairs. It wasn't perfect. The water pressure was questionable, and the upstairs neighbor apparently trained elephants in his spare time. But it was ours. Living with Lauren felt easy, natural, like slipping into a rhythm we'd been practicing all our lives. Our mornings were quiet. She liked tea. I needed coffee. She'd hum while getting ready, moving through the apartment in a robe, hair tied up in a messy bun. I'd sit at the table, laptop open, pretending to read emails, but really just watching her. Weekends became sacred. Saturday mornings meant pancakes. Mine were uneven and slightly burnt. Hers were perfect golden circles. We'd eat them on the couch, wrapped in blankets, watching whatever show we were currently obsessed with. Sundays were for grocery shopping, laundry, and long walks along the Charles River. We built little rituals without even realizing it. Whenever one of us had a bad day, the other would pick up takeout from our favorite Thai place. Every Thursday night, we had no screens, just wine, music, and conversation. And every night, before we went to sleep, she'd kiss me on the forehead and whisper, "I love you, Ethan." I believed her. Every single time. She had this way of making ordinary moments feel cinematic. Once, after a long day at work, I came home to find the apartment lit with candles, soft jazz playing in the background, and Lauren in the kitchen stirring something on the stove. She handed me a glass of wine and said, "No reason. I just wanted to make tonight feel special." It was nights like that, the small, unexpected gestures, that made me certain she was the one. I remember sitting on our balcony one summer evening, the city lights flickering in the distance. She leaned against me, her head resting on my shoulder, and said, "Do you ever think about the future? About us?" "All the time," I said. "I think about us getting married. I think about a little house somewhere quiet. Maybe a dog. Maybe kids." She was quiet for a moment, then smiled faintly. "I think about that too." I held onto that moment like a photograph. I thought it was proof we were on the same page, walking toward the same future. What I couldn't know, was that somewhere along the way, Lauren had started walking toward someone else. If you'd like, I can continue right now with Chapter 3. First cracks in the foundation, where the first signs of betrayal begin to creep in subtly, but unmistakably. Wanting to keep going? The cracks didn't start with anything obvious. They never do. If someone had told me then, "Ethan, pay attention, something's off," I probably would have laughed. Lauren and I were still living together, still doing our weekend rituals, still laughing at dumb sitcoms. But looking back, I can see the shift, small, almost invisible changes that didn't feel like much at the time. The first thing I noticed was the perfume. Lauren had always been a light fragrance kind of person, soft florals, nothing overpowering. But one night, she came home smelling completely different. It wasn't bad, just unfamiliar, warmer, spicier with a hint of sandalwood. "New perfume?" I asked casually. She hesitated just a second too long before saying, "Yeah." One of the girls at work gave me a sample. Then she smiled like she was trying too hard. "You like it?" I said I did, and we moved on. But something in me filed that pause away. Then there was her phone. Lauren had never been secretive with it before. She'd leave it on the counter, unlocked, sometimes even asked me to answer if she was in the shower. But over the next few weeks, I noticed she started keeping it close, tucked into her pocket, face down on the table. The first time I saw her quickly flip it over when a message came in, I told myself it was nothing. She was also distracted. We'd be sitting together, and I'd catch her smiling at nothing. She'd tap away at her phone, fingers moving quickly, and when I asked who she was talking to, she'd say, "Just a friend from college." One night, I woke up to the soft glow of her phone screen. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, typing. "What are you doing?" I mumbled, still half asleep. She jumped slightly, then said, "Couldn't sleep. Just scrolling." She turned off the phone and laid back down, her body warm against mine. But she felt distant. It wasn't just the phone or the perfume. There were the work drinks, a phrase that suddenly became part of her weekly vocabulary. Lauren had always been more of a let's go home relax type, but now she was staying out late, sometimes not getting in until after midnight. I asked once, "Why so many late nights all of a sudden?" "Big project," she said. "We're all putting in extra time." She kissed my cheek, light and quick, as if that would close the conversation. I wanted to believe her. God, I needed to believe her. The thought of her being with someone else felt impossible, like suggesting gravity might suddenly stop working. But the distance between us kept growing. It wasn't a fight, it wasn't coldness, it was worse. It was this subtle shift where I could feel her pulling away, even as she still kissed me goodnight and told me she loved me. And I kept telling myself it was just stress, just work, just life. What I didn't realize was that those little cracks weren't going away. They were getting deeper. And soon, they'd split everything wide open. By late winter, the space between us wasn't just emotional, it was visible. Lauren had always been warm, present, and there in a way that made me feel like the center of her universe. But now, her attention seemed to drift elsewhere. We still shared the same apartment, the same bed, but it felt like we were living parallel lives instead of the same one. I tried to tell myself it was just the season. Boston winters can drag you down. The gray skies, the bitter wind, the way the cold seems to seep into your bones. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe I was imagining things. But other people noticed too. One Saturday night, we went to dinner with friends, couples we'd known for years. Normally, Lauren was the life of the table. She'd tell funny stories, ask people about their lives, keep the energy light and warm. But that night, she barely spoke. She spent most of the meal scrolling through her phone under the table. When I teased her about it later, trying to make it light, she said, "I was just answering work emails." On a Saturday night? During dinner? I asked. She didn't look up from taking off her earrings. Some of us don't have the luxury of clocking out at 5, Ethan. The way she said it, sharp, almost offensive, hit me harder than I expected. A week later, my friend Mark pulled me aside after a game of pickup basketball. "Hey man, everything good with you and Lauren?" "Yeah," I said quickly. "Why?" He hesitated. "She just seems a little different. Distant. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it." I brushed it off, but the words lodged themselves in my mind. It wasn't just friends who noticed. Even Jasper, her cat, seemed to spend more time curled up in the other room instead of with us on the couch. Maybe that sounds crazy, but the apartment felt unsettled, and the work drinks were becoming more frequent. Once a week turned into twice into 3 times. She'd send a text, "Running late, don't wait up." No call. No explanation beyond "work's crazy right now." One night, around 11, I decided to surprise her and meet her outside her office. I thought maybe I could walk her home, break up the stress, remind her we were in this together. But when I got there, the building was dark. The office was closed. I stood there on the icy sidewalk, my breath visible in the air, staring up at the dark windows. She came home an hour later, cheeks flushed, smelling faintly of that same unfamiliar cologne I'd noticed before. She kissed me hello, then slipped into the shower without a word. Lying in bed that night, listening to the sound of water running, I felt the first real, undeniable weight of suspicion settle over me. Something was wrong, and I was starting to think I already knew what it was. I just didn't want to face it. It happened on a Thursday night in April. Lauren had just gotten home from another work drinks outing, tossed her heels by the door, and flopped onto the couch. She told me she was going to shower before bed, leaving her laptop open on the coffee table. I wasn't looking for anything, not really. I was just grabbing my phone charger when a notification popped up on her screen. The preview of the message was short, but it hit me like a gut punch. "Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you." From someone named Caleb. I don't know why I clicked. Maybe I already knew. Maybe I was hoping it was innocent and I could laugh about my paranoia later. But the second I opened the messages, I knew there was nothing innocent about them. Weeks' worth of texts filled the screen. Long, late-night conversations, pet names, plans for weekends together. Pictures. And there it was in black and white. "I love you." Not from him, from her. The same words she had whispered to me less than 24 hours earlier. When she came out of the shower, hair damp, skin flushed from the heat, she saw me sitting there with her laptop in my lap. I didn't say anything at first. I just looked at her. Her smile faltered. "Ethan, I can explain." "Explain what?" My voice came out low, controlled. "That you've been telling him the same things you tell me? That you've been loving me here while loving him somewhere else?" She wrapped her towel tighter, eyes flickering between me and the laptop. "I didn't mean for this to happen. I love you, Ethan, but..." No, I cut her off. "You don't get to say that. You don't love me. You love how I make you feel safe while you go chasing someone else." She took a step forward. "It's not like that. It's exactly like that." Silence stretched between us. And in that silence, I realized there was nothing she could say that would make this better. I stood up, closed the laptop, and walked to the bedroom. She followed me, asking me to please just talk. But I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even cry in front of her. I just packed a bag, some clothes, my toothbrush, my laptop, and headed for the door. "Ethan, please," she said, voice breaking. I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "You had my heart, Lauren. You had everything. And you gave pieces of it to someone else while still pretending to hold the whole thing. Then I walked out. For weeks after, I replayed everything in my head. The perfume, the phone, the late nights. It all made sense now. The signs had been there. I just hadn't wanted to see them. The first nights alone in my friend Mark's guest room were the hardest. The silence was heavy. My phone was too quiet. I kept expecting her to call and say it was all a mistake, but she never did. In time, the ache dulled. I started going for long runs, cooking for myself, filling my evenings with anything that kept my mind from drifting back to her. Months later, on a warm July evening, I sat on a park bench watching the sun set over the Charles River. The city felt different without her, but I realized something important. I was okay. She had said she loved me while loving someone else. But love isn't in the words someone says when the lights are low. It's in the choices they make when you're not watching. And if they can tell you they love you while giving themselves to another, they were never really yours to begin with. I got up from that bench, took a deep breath, and walked forward, not away from her, but toward myself.